Emma woke up earlier than usual, her heart pounding with anticipation. Sunlight filtered softly through her bedroom window, casting warm streaks across the beige walls. Today was the day, her first job interview. The thought alone sent a rush of nerves through her chest, but she was determined to stay focused. She sat up, took a deep breath, and repeated quietly, "I can do this." Her eyes shifted to the printed copy of her resume on the nightstand, neatly tucked into a blue folder. The bold letters of her name, Emma Wright, stared back at her. Next to it, a checklist she'd made the night before reminded her of everything she needed: resume, ID, a notebook for notes, and a pen, all packed, ready to go. Sliding out of bed, Emma made her way to the mirror and examined her reflection. Her brown hair was slightly tousled from sleep, but a quick brush would fix that. She held up the blazer she had chosen, navy blue with a white blouse. Professional, but still true to her style. As she dressed, Emma began rehearsing answers aloud, her voice steady but careful. "Tell me about yourself." "I'm a dedicated professional with a passion for helping others." She paused, trying to recall the phrases she had practiced the night before. "My strengths? I'm organized and great at communication." Her words felt a little stiff, but she reminded herself that practice was key. The sound of her phone buzzing interrupted her thoughts. It was a message from her friend Mia. "Good luck today." "You've got this," Emma smiled, grateful for the encouragement. She replied with a simple, "Thanks, I'll let you know how it goes." By now, her nerves had started to settle, but as she tied her shoes, her mind wandered back to the what-ifs. What if I forget my words? What if I freeze up? Shaking off the thoughts, she whispered, "Focus, Emma." She opened her notebook and jotted down a few last-minute reminders. Maintain eye contact. Speak clearly. Smile. Breakfast was light, just toast and a cup of tea. Her stomach was too tight to eat much more. As she sat at the kitchen table, she reviewed the company's website one last time, mentally repeating key points about their values and goals: team collaboration, customer satisfaction, growth mindset. The clock ticked closer to 8:30 am, and Emma knew it was time to leave. She grabbed her bag, took a final glance in the mirror, and whispered, "You've prepared for this. Stay calm." Stepping outside, the crisp morning air filled her lungs. The city was waking up, with cars humming and people rushing to work. Emma clutched her folder a little tighter as she walked toward the bus stop. Today was a big day, and she was ready to face it. The bus ride felt longer than usual. Emma sat by the window, her hands resting on the blue folder in her lap. She watched the city blur past, tall office buildings, coffee shops just opening for the morning rush, and people bustling on sidewalks with their own daily routines. The steady hum of the engine did little to calm her racing thoughts. She mentally reviewed the directions for the 5th time. Take the 7th Avenue bus, get off at Maple Street, then walk 2 blocks to Fairview Plaza. She had triple-checked it last night, but still felt the need to repeat it, as if the repetition might quiet her nerves. When the bus finally stopped, Emma stepped off, adjusting the strap of her bag on her shoulder. The cool breeze brushed her face as she glanced around, spotting the modern glass-front building just ahead, Fairview Plaza. The towering structure reflected the pale morning sky, and the bold silver letters of the company's name stood out above the entrance, Greenridge Solutions. Emma inhaled deeply, steadying herself. "You've got this." Pushing open the heavy glass door, she entered a bright, spacious lobby. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. The floor was polished white marble, and the walls were lined with abstract art that added a touch of creativity to the professional space. A few people in business attire moved through the area, some holding folders like hers, others engaged in quiet conversations near the seating area. At the reception desk, a young woman with a warm smile and a sleek black headset greeted her. Her name tag read Sophia. Emma approached, clutching her folder just a little tighter. "Good morning," she began, her voice calm but careful. "I'm here for a job interview with Mr. Harris at 10 a.m. Sophia nodded, typing something into her computer. "Of course, Ms. Wright. Could you please sign him here?" Emma signed her name on the digital tablet, her fingers slightly trembling as she completed the form. "Thank you," Sophia said, handing her a visitor badge with a bright red sticker labeled Guest. "Mr. Harris is finishing a meeting but will be with you shortly. You can have a seat right over there." Emma smiled politely. "Thank you." She moved to the seating area near a tall window where sunlight streamed in. She chose a sleek gray armchair, setting her folder carefully on her lap. The quiet murmur of the lobby felt almost too loud as she adjusted the badge on her blazer. "Stay calm, breathe." A man in a sharp navy suit entered the lobby and exchanged a few words with Sophia before being escorted down a hallway. Emma couldn't help but wonder if he was another candidate. Her eyes drifted to the large clock on the wall. 9:52, almost time. She took another deep breath, stealing a glance at the modern surroundings once more. Everything felt professional, but also welcoming. It was time to prove she belonged here. Emma shifted slightly in her seat, her hands still resting on the blue folder as she stole another glance at the clock. 9:55, and the ticking seemed louder now, each second stretching longer than it should. The waiting room was quiet, yet filled with a subtle tension Emma couldn't shake. Across from her, a large abstract painting in shades of blue and gray hung on the wall, but she couldn't focus on the patterns. Instead, her mind replayed the questions she had rehearsed that morning. "Tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work here? What are your strengths?" Her heart raced as she whispered the answers under her breath, trying not to draw attention. "I'm a dedicated professional, passionate about teamwork and customer satisfaction." Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps made her sit up straighter. A woman in a gray dress stepped into the waiting area, calling another candidate's name. A man in a crisp suit stood, clutching his briefcase tightly as he followed her down the hallway. Emma watched him disappear, her stomach knotting tighter. He looked so confident. "Do I look like that? Or do I seem too nervous?" She adjusted her blazer, smoothing invisible wrinkles on the sleeve. "You're prepared. You practiced for this." Her thoughts were interrupted when the receptionist, Sophia, approached with a gentle smile. "Would you like some water while you wait, Miss Wright?" Emma blinked, caught off guard by the kindness. "Oh, yes, please." "Thank you." As Sophia returned with a small glass of water, Emma whispered a quiet thank you and took a slow sip, grateful for something to hold. Her eyes drifted to a framed motivational quote on the wall. Confidence is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. She read it twice, letting the words sink in. Suddenly, her phone buzzed softly in her bag. Emma glanced around, making sure no one noticed before carefully checking the screen. It was another message from Mia. "You're going to do amazing." "Just be yourself." Emma felt her chest loosen slightly. She turned the phone off and tucked it back into her purse. Deep breath. Shoulders back. Smile. Just then, a tall man with graying hair and a neatly pressed navy suit appeared at the edge of the waiting area. His eyes scanned the room briefly before stopping on her. "Ms. Wright?" Emma stood, smoothing her blazer once more. "Yes, that's me." He extended his hand with a polite smile. "I'm Mr. Harris. Thank you for waiting. Please, come this way." Emma shook his hand, her grip firm but respectful. "Thank you, Mr. Harris. It's a pleasure to meet you." As she followed him down the hallway, the waiting room fading behind her, she felt a strange mix of nerves and readiness. "This is it." Emma followed Mr. Harris down a quiet, carpeted hallway, the sound of their footsteps barely audible against the soft floor. The walls were lined with framed certificates and motivational quotes, their bold fonts blending into the professional atmosphere. Her heart was still racing, but she focused on steadying her breathing, keeping her posture straight and confident. They reached a glass-walled conference room where natural light streamed in, illuminating a sleek wooden table with a notepad and a glass of water neatly placed at the center. "Please have a seat, Mr. Harris said, gesturing to the chair across from his. "Thank you," Emma replied, carefully setting her folder on the table as she sat down. She clasped her hands in her lap, resisting the urge to fidget. Mr. Harris took his seat, adjusting his glasses before offering a reassuring smile. "So, Emma, thank you for coming in today. I understand this is your first job interview?" Emma nodded with a polite smile. "Yes, it is." "Thank you for the opportunity." He gave an approving nod. "Of course. Let's start with something simple. Could you tell me a little about yourself?" Emma felt her pulse quicken, but she had prepared for this. She sat a little straighter. "Certainly. My name is Emma Wright, and I'm passionate about working with people and helping create positive experiences in a professional setting. I recently completed a customer service workshop where I learned effective communication techniques and teamwork strategies. I'm excited to apply these skills in a workplace like this." Mr. Harris nodded, scribbling a note on his notepad. "That's a great start, Emma. And why do you want to work with us specifically?" Emma took a quiet breath, remembering her research. "Well, I admire how Greenridge Solutions values teamwork and personal growth. I've read about your community outreach programs and employee development initiatives, and I'd love to contribute to a company that prioritizes both its clients and staff." The interviewer smiled again, nodding thoughtfully. "I'm glad you took the time to learn about us. It shows initiative." Emma felt a small wave of relief. "Now," Mr. Harris continued, "what would you say are your strengths?" Emma paused briefly before speaking, keeping her words clear and calm. "I'm very organized and detail-oriented. I make sure tasks are completed on time and thoroughly. I'm also a strong communicator, which helps me work well in team environments and resolve issues effectively. Mr. Harris scribbled a few more notes before folding his hands together. And what about challenges? Everyone has areas they're working on. Could you share one of yours? Emma hesitated for a heartbeat, but reminded herself to be honest without sounding negative. Well, I used to struggle with public speaking. I would get nervous presenting in front of groups. But I've been working on it by volunteering to lead small meetings during my workshops, and I've seen a lot of improvement. Mr. Harris gave a slight smile, clearly impressed. Self-awareness and growth, two important qualities. Thank you for sharing that, Emma. The conversation felt natural, the questions flowing smoothly. Emma felt herself relaxing, though the interview was far from over. Emma could feel the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. The conversation was flowing, and she reminded herself to stay focused. Mr. Harris adjusted his notepad and leaned forward slightly, his expression calm but attentive. "Now, Emma," he began, "can you tell me about a time when you had to solve a problem under pressure?" Emma felt a brief flicker of doubt, but quickly centered herself. She had prepared for questions like this. "Yes, of course," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "During my customer service workshop, we were tasked with organizing a group presentation with limited time. One of our team members was absent on the final day, and I had to step in and cover their part with very little preparation. I stayed calm, reviewed the material quickly, and focused on delivering a clear explanation. Our presentation went well, and I learned how important it is to stay adaptable under pressure." Mr. Harris nodded, jotting a note on his pad. "That's a solid example. Handling unexpected situations with composure is a valuable skill." Emma offered a slight smile, encouraged by his positive response. "Let's move on," he continued. "This position involves working with a team. How do you handle disagreements in a professional setting?" Emma paused thoughtfully, then responded, "I believe open communication is key when resolving disagreements. I try to listen carefully to everyone's perspective before offering my own. In one workshop activity, we had conflicting ideas about how to structure our project. I suggested we list the pros and cons of each approach together, which helped us find common ground without tension. I've found that staying calm and collaborative works best." Mr. Harris's expression softened with approval. "Excellent. It sounds like you prioritize teamwork and clarity, which aligns with our company culture." Emma nodded, feeling more confident with each question. The next one, however, caught her slightly off guard. "What motivates you in a professional environment?" Emma blinked but quickly found her words. "I'm motivated by growth and learning. I enjoy taking on new challenges that help me improve my skills and contribute positively to the team. Seeing progress, both personally and within the company, keeps me inspired." Mr. Harris jotted a final note, then closed his notepad. "Emma, you've been doing very well so far. I can see you've prepared thoroughly." Emma felt a wave of relief, her earlier nervousness fading into quiet confidence. "Thank you," she replied, her voice warm but professional. Mr. Harris leaned back slightly in his chair, folding his hands together. "We're almost finished, but before we wrap up, I'd like to give you a chance to ask any questions you might have for me. It's important for us that this position is the right fit for you as well." Emma nodded, feeling a shift in the conversation. She had prepared for this moment, too. Now was her chance to leave a positive final impression. Emma took a deep breath. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the part of the interview where she could truly show her ability to think on her feet. Mr. Harris had just asked if she had any questions for him, and she had one in mind that felt important. "Yes," Emma said, her voice steady. "Could you tell me more about the company's approach to professional development? I'm eager to continue learning and growing in my career." Mr. Harris smiled at her question, clearly impressed. "That's a great question. At Greenridge Solutions, we focus heavily on training programs and mentorship. We believe in continuous learning, and we offer opportunities for employees to attend workshops, conferences, and even further education if they're interested." Emma nodded, feeling encouraged. This was exactly the kind of growth opportunity she had hoped for. But then Mr. Harris leaned forward slightly, his expression more serious. "I have one more question for you, Emma," he said, his tone shifting. "Every workplace has challenges, and we want to ensure that our employees are capable of handling them. What would you say is your biggest weakness?" Emma felt a brief moment of panic, but she knew this was a common question. It wasn't a trick. It was just part of the process. She took a deep breath, remembering her preparation. "Well," she began, choosing her words carefully, "I used to struggle with public speaking. I would get nervous in front of a group, which made it hard for me to present my ideas clearly. But over the past few months, I've been working on it by taking part in team meetings and even leading a few presentations in my workshop. I've learned a lot, and while it's still a challenge, I feel much more confident now." Mr. Harris nodded thoughtfully, writing something down. "That's an honest and mature response, Emma. Recognizing areas for improvement is a key step in personal growth, and it sounds like you're actively working on it." Emma smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. She had been worried about this question, but now that it was out in the open, she felt more at ease. "Thank you," she said, grateful for the understanding. The interviewer didn't immediately respond. Instead, he spent a moment reviewing her resume once more before looking back at her. "It's important to be self-aware, and it's clear you're someone who reflects on your strengths and areas for improvement. That's something we value here." Emma felt a small sense of pride. Despite the difficulty of the question, she had handled it well, and Mr. Harris seemed genuinely appreciative of her honesty. "So," Mr. Harris continued, now smiling again, "let's move forward. I'd like to hear about how you handle working under pressure. Can you think of a situation where you had to manage a tight deadline or a stressful project?" Emma took another deep breath, ready to tackle the next challenge. This was a moment to showcase her adaptability. Emma felt the tension start to lift as the conversation shifted back to her. Mr. Harris's questions had been challenging, but she had made it through with poise. Now, it was time for her to take the reins of the interview. She had prepared for this moment, and she wasn't going to let it slip by. "Before we finish, I'd like to give you a chance to ask any questions you might have for me," Mr. Harris said, leaning back in his chair with a smile. "It's important that you feel comfortable with the role and the company." Emma's heart gave a small flutter, but she quickly steadied herself. "This is the moment to show my interest and enthusiasm." "Thank you, Mr. Harris," she began, keeping her tone respectful and calm. "I do have a few questions. First, could you tell me a little more about the team I would be working with? What's the dynamic like? Mr. Harris nodded thoughtfully, clearly pleased with her inquiry. That's a great question. The team is small but collaborative. Everyone has their own area of expertise, but we all work together closely, sharing ideas and supporting each other. It's a very positive environment where we encourage everyone to contribute and learn from one another. Emma felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of team she had been hoping to find. That sounds wonderful, she said, smiling. It's really important to me to work in a team where everyone's opinion is valued, Mr. Harris smiled back. I can tell you'd be a good fit. Encouraged, Emma pressed on. And what are the next steps in the hiring process? When can I expect to hear back? Mr. Harris glanced at his watch, then made a note in his notepad. We'll be reviewing all the candidates this week and should have a decision by Friday. If we decide to move forward, we'll invite you for a second interview to meet with some of the team members. We're looking for someone who fits in well with the team and who's eager to grow within the company. Emma nodded, absorbing every word. Thank you for the clarification, she said, feeling a sense of relief. The process was moving forward, and she was one step closer to her goal. Lastly, Emma said, her voice steady, could you tell me more about the company's approach to work-life balance? I believe in putting in hard work, but I also value personal time to recharge and stay focused. Mr. Harris leaned back, his expression thoughtful. That's something we take very seriously here. We understand that people need time for themselves outside of work, and we offer flexible schedules where possible. We also encourage employees to take their vacation days and disconnect when needed. Emma felt a weight lift off her shoulders. This was everything she had hoped for in a workplace. That's great to hear, she said, genuinely relieved. Work-life balance is very important to me, Mr. Harris smiled warmly. It's good to know that you share those values. The interview had been long, but Emma felt confident that she had made a strong impression. She had asked the right questions, answered thoughtfully, and shared her enthusiasm for the role. It was no longer just about impressing Mr. Harris. It was about making sure this company was the right fit for her as well. The interview was nearing its end, and Emma felt a quiet sense of accomplishment wash over her. Mr. Harris had been nothing but professional, and she had done her best to match his tone. She had answered every question to the best of her ability and asked insightful ones in return. Now, it was time for the final moments. Mr. Harris placed his notepad on the table and smiled. Emma, I must say, you've impressed me today. You've shown a great deal of professionalism and enthusiasm for the role. I think you'd be a strong addition to the team. Emma felt a flutter in her chest, the nerves she had been carrying throughout the interview slowly melting away. She smiled, grateful for the compliment. Thank you, Mr. Harris. It means a lot to hear that. He stood and extended his hand across the table. Thank you for your time today, Emma. I'll be in touch soon about next steps. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Emma shook his hand, her grip firm but warm. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited about the possibility of working with your team. As she gathered her things and stood to leave, Mr. Harris walked with her to the door. Have a great rest of your day, Emma, he said, holding the door open for her. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Mr. Harris. I look forward to hearing from you, Emma replied, stepping into the hallway. She walked out of the conference room, her footsteps echoing softly in the quiet corridor. As she passed the receptionist's desk, Sophia gave her a friendly smile and a nod. Good luck, Emma, she said. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you, Sophia, Emma said with a smile, feeling a sense of gratitude toward the staff who had made her feel welcome. As she reached the elevator, Emma pressed the button and leaned against the wall, her mind buzzing with everything that had just happened. She had answered the tough questions, asked insightful ones, and stayed true to herself throughout the process. I did it, I stayed calm, I was myself, and I gave it my best shot. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and Emma stepped inside, the doors closing gently behind her. As the elevator descended to the ground floor, she took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She had done everything she could. Now it was time to wait. But no matter the outcome, Emma felt proud of the way she had handled herself. When the doors opened, she stepped out into the lobby, her heart still racing slightly, but filled with a quiet confidence. She walked out of the building into the bright afternoon light, and as she made her way to the bus stop, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The interview was over, and no matter what happened, she had learned and grown from the experience. This was just the beginning.